Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm Andrew Seaman, the LinkedIn news editor for job searches and careers. And this is our weekly conversation where we talk about job searching during these difficult times. As always, I want to welcome you to the show and ask you to introduce yourself into the comments. I see a lot of you doing that already. I think I see Andrea from Clearwater, Florida. We have Lisa from Connecticut, and I think I saw Sasha from Amsterdam. So make sure you keep introducing yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you're looking for in your next job, where you're looking for your next job, what industry you're looking to move into. So once you get that out of the way, I want you to also network with people in the stream. So maybe you see someone who works in the industry that you want to work in. Maybe they work at a company or worked at a company that you want to work at. Make those connections and talk to each other. Some of the best messages I get after the show are from people who actually end up job searching as a group based on who they met in the comments. So work together. Maybe you could job search together. And what's really wonderful about that is research shows that people who job search together find jobs faster. And obviously, networking is a cornerstone component to a successful job search. So, what better time to start than now? Make sure you get all those into the comments. And then once you do that, please put your questions into the stream as well, because we have a wonderful expert coming up. In fact, let's bring her on now. So Anna, this is Anna Lokotkova. So welcome so much to the show. And you're a career coach and founder of CV Labs.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, no, thank you for joining us. And you're joining us from snowy Canada. And I'm not wrong, it is snowing there, right?
It is. It is snowing like crazy today.
Well, I love snow, I'm happy to hear that. People elsewhere maybe not be happy to hear that, but welcome to the show. And one thing that we talked about before the show was a post that you put up about rejection. And I think rejection is something that is just, it is so common while you're job searching, but a lot of people don't want to talk about it. So why is it important to talk about rejection as a job seeker?
I think it's kind of the elephant in the room, because everybody who is job searching has been through rejection. And a lot of the advice that you find online is kind of like, that motivational and very enthusiastic and telling you that rejection is no big deal. It's another no on your way to your one yes or something like that. And, I appreciate that message. And I know that that could be exactly what someone needs to hear today, tomorrow, yesterday, or whatever. But at the same time, I think we all know that sometimes rejection feels like a big deal, and we're human. And especially when all you get are rejections for jobs that, could be a perfect fit for what you have to offer, for your skill set, for your background, and for what you want in your professional life and in your career in general. So I feel like it's important to acknowledge that, first of all, it's okay to feel that way, but at the same time, it can really damage your chances of landing that next opportunity that you're looking for. Because again, whether we like it or not, we cannot control it. We cannot choose to avoid getting rejected. It's just part of the process. And I do believe that the right mindset is one of the cornerstones of a successful job search. Because sometimes, especially in times like right now, not believing in yourself is kind of not an option. So it's important to talk about rejection, and it's important to know how to handle it in the healthiest way possible and know how to bounce back from it.
Definitely. And can you tell us a little bit about what strategies people should use if they're facing sort of rejection after rejection, and also, what to do with that mindset? Because so many people, I get messages from them who say, listen, I've been out of work for 4 or 5 months and it's just getting very discouraging. So what do you suggest job seekers do?
Oh, I hear you. I get the same messages every single day, and my clients, when they come to me, they are so frustrated, and there's so much negativity that kind of has accumulated over time. So I totally get that. There are definitely some things to be said on like mindset and the whole idea of what you can do to be able to handle rejection in a healthy way. And there's also the part of, okay, so once you kind of know how to deal with those emotions, what can you do to still increase your chances and not let opportunities pass by? So when it comes to the latter, I think follow-up is one of the most important things that you need to be doing in job search. And unfortunately, a lot of people, a lot of job candidates underestimate how important it is to continue building those relationships with employers. Because even if you get a sorry, not sorry email and people are saying no after a job interview, it doesn't mean that this is over. It doesn't mean that you haven't made a great impression and maybe that person might refer you to someone else they know for another conversation, for another job interview, or for another opportunity. So it's really important to be somewhat persistent, I guess. Obviously, not to an extent of becoming annoying, but being persistent with your follow up and knowing that a no does not mean that you need to stop investing in that relationship. And when it comes to your mindset, for years, I've kind of been struggling with the idea, like everybody talks about mindset. It's like one of those buzzwords when you hear it and you're like, yeah, that sounds great. How do I do that? And then I started doing some research and like learning about what that actually means. And apparently there's a whole scientific field. Well, obviously there's neuroscience and there's psychologists who work on understanding how our brain works. And if you ever noticed, like when you start thinking about something, for whatever reason, all of a sudden, the world around you starts showing you some evidence in favor of what it is that you're thinking. I mean, a basic example is like if you're thinking of buying a new car, suddenly on the streets, you see a lot more of that specific model that you like because you've been thinking about it. And now it's not that everybody just went ahead and bought the exact same car. It's just that now your brain is presenting you that evidence to confirm that thing that you've been thinking about the most in the latest weeks, let's say. So if all you've been thinking about for weeks is that there is nothing out there for me, there are no good jobs, there are no good opportunities, nobody's hiring, I'm not good enough, and all of those, that negative spiral of all of those things that, I mean, sometimes we've all been there, we hit those low points, but if that's all you dwell on, it will be very hard to break through that. So it's important to realize that first it's a normal part of the process and you're not alone facing those emotions and those feelings. And I know that there's not much comfort in that because you know that there are hundreds, if not thousands of other people going through the exact same thing as you are, but you need to compete against all of those people. So I find that one of the most practical tactics that also helps me because I'm not job searching, but I get rejected for stuff that I may want in life. And sometimes it really sucks. So one of the things that has helped me is to reframe my thinking because immediately after you get rejected, you start asking questions, why? Like, why did they go with someone else? Why is this happening to me? Why are things getting so tough? And that question is not productive. It puts you in that state of, of negativity, of self-blame or blaming external factors and stuff. So instead, think in terms of questions, what and how. And even asking yourself in your head, the way you ask those questions matters because that self-chatter that is happening kind of behind the scenes and nobody's hearing it, it actually essentially programs you for a certain result. So if you think in terms of not, why did they go with someone else, but how can I make a better impression next time? That immediately positions you towards looking for solutions rather than dwelling on negative emotions.
Yes, and I think all those are such wonderful tips, and I know they resonate with members. And because Andrea was asking while you were speaking, basically, how do you not take rejection personally? And then Dolores also said that the way you suggested that, how to deal with rejection is such a great idea. So I think that's so wonderful. And we have so many people joining the stream, and I know they probably deal with rejection a lot too. But I want to give a shout out to some of them. I think we have David from Miami. We have Ferruccio from Italy, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. And we also have another Anna from New Jersey. So welcome to the stream. Get your job searching questions in now, and we'll start taking questions right away. So to start off, one of the things that came in basically is, people deal with recruiters all the time. When they're job searching, and sometimes it's a good experience or a bad experience. And Jada wants to know, what is the ideal time to work with recruiters? So is there a specific part of your job search that you should be working with a recruiter, or should you sort of make an effort to deal with them, throughout your job search? What is a good time to interact with them?
I'm a big fan of diversifying your strategy when it comes to a lot of different things, and job search is no exception. So if you have an opportunity to start working with recruiters as part of your entire plan of all of the activities that you are going to be doing as part of your job search, I'd say go for it. Because, obviously, there are certain benefits to contacting employers directly, and obviously reaching out to decision makers is one of the best ways how you can use your time, and one of the ways how you can get the highest value out of that time spent, basically maximize your return on investment, so to speak. But recruiters have access, most of the time they have access to exclusive opportunities that are not published elsewhere. So they are hired exclusively to manage the hiring process for a certain number of opportunities that you may not be able to find elsewhere. So I think reaching out to them, the sooner the better. And obviously, sometimes it's a challenge because I think a lot of job seekers don't realize how busy recruiters truly are. Like there's a whole conversation, I'm sure you've seen that as well. Everybody's talking about like recruiters always ghost me. They never get back to me in time, or I never heard back about this opportunity. Guys, trust me, I've been on that side. It's tough. Like if it, I understand that it's hard to manage that whole silence or rejection, but sometimes just think for 1 second, put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter and realize that you'll be getting hundreds of messages every single day, and half of those messages are not even relevant to what you do, because sometimes people unfortunately don't take the time to do their homework, to research the recruiter, and to have an understanding of, what kinds of opportunities does that recruiter actually work with, or what kind of companies, what kind of clients. So just give recruiters, like, cut them some slack and show some empathy to their position as well. And then, obviously you cannot control the entire interaction, but and then there comes a time when it's up to you to show your best self, because you cannot control their time of reaction. You cannot control how busy they are. You cannot control whether they have the right opportunity for you. But what you can control is how you present yourself. So even if nothing comes out of that relationship with the recruiter, at least you get to practice that process. You get to practice selling yourself, your skill set, your professionalism, your background. And hopefully, if you get in touch with the right type of a recruiter who deals with opportunities that you are a relevant candidate for, well, great. Then I'm sure that you can get a lot of productive outcomes out of this relationship. So I don't think that there's necessarily one better time to do this. I just say, go for it as part of your strategy and make it, incorporate that into your job search plan.
Yes, and I think that's such great advice, and especially the part about understanding the side of the recruiter, because not only will that give you a better frame of reference for what's happening behind the scene, it also makes your job search smarter, because you start realizing, okay, well, if they are overwhelmed with resumes, this is how I can get to them, maybe outside of the applicant tracking system or just traditional applications. So I think that's fantastic advice. And we have a follow-up question here from Erica. That I think is what a lot of people sometimes wonder about and run into. And Erica basically says, how do you get to the hiring manager and not just the recruiter? And is that even a good idea, do you think?
I would say generally it is a great idea. And the main reason for that is because the mindset of the decision maker is very different from the mindset of a recruiter, whether we're talking about an in-house recruiter or an external third-party recruiting company. The mindset of the decision maker is different, and all they really want are results. So they want to see if you can make their life easier, and hopefully that you make a good fit so that you can stick around and keep making their lives easier for quite some time, so they don't have to find a substitute for you right away. So how you can get to them? Networking. That's the main and biggest, again, the biggest way to maximize your return on the time you invest and the effort and all of it. And obviously, I'm not going to burst a bubble here by saying that LinkedIn is the best place to look for those people. And obviously, you can use the traditional search tool and try to look for a job title and the company name, and you can hopefully get some profiles, and at least you can get the name of the person. And there are also tools to get in touch with them over email, even if you don't know their email address. So there are definitely some ways how you can get in touch with those people, but The only thing that you need to remember, or the one of the many things that you need to remember, is that if you approach a decision maker with the same proposition as a recruiter, as in, please hire me, that's not the mindset of the decision maker. They are not looking for the most active job seeker. They're looking for someone who can help, overcome certain challenges, resolve their problems, make their life easier. So if you come to them with a value proposition and with the idea, hey, I have something to offer here, I can help you, what if we talk about this? Then the story changes completely. So, and I feel like, I hear from a lot of job seekers who are always saying, well, I tried to get in touch with the hiring manager, but they told me to go back to the online application process. Well, yeah, because probably the way you reached out to them sounded like, I'm applying for this position, can we have a conversation? And of course, they are not going to get back to you with, I'm going to prioritize you over 100 other people and have a conversation with you right away. They have to keep things fair, and they will send you away to the online application, like the standard application process.
Yeah, definitely. And then I especially like what you said about the part about, solving their problems, because I think so many job seekers rely on what I think I hear a lot of career coaches call the spray and pray method, which is that you just send out a ton of applications and you hope for the best. When in reality, if you tailor those applications to the company's specific needs, you get a much better response. So it's always about quality over quantity. So I think that's such a good focus to say, okay, I'm focusing on the company, not necessarily the fact that I just need a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we have a question here, and I think there's a lot of questions about follow-up, because people reach out to recruiters, they reach out to hiring managers, and sometimes they get crickets, or they just don't hear anything back after an interview or some initial communication, which a lot of people call ghosting. So we have a question here, which is from Amelia. Any tips on the etiquette of chasing up recruiters and hiring managers? So how do you maybe, get in touch with them, but also how do you follow up with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad that we're talking about this today. A lot of the times when I say follow up, what people hear is an opportunity to get some feedback. So they're using that as an opportunity to say, hey, what did I do wrong in this interview? Or why haven't you selected my resume? What should I change in there so that next time it works better? And here's the problem. Recruiters, or hiring managers for that matter, it's not really their job to coach anyone through their job search strategy. And I know that it sounds very rough, but it's the reality. And I always, I try to keep things as realistic as possible, because I think managing your expectations is one of the most important parts of your job search as well. So if that's what you're thinking in terms of follow-up, if you're hoping to get some feedback and some even coaching from people who are going to explain to you why you didn't get the position or why you didn't get selected for an interview, that is not going to happen. I mean, there might be some rare exceptions, and that's awesome. Kudos to those recruiters who do that. But I mean, as a coach, I know that, for example, it's my job to do that. That's why I have work, right? That's what I do for people. And if you expect a recruiter to do that, that's not going to happen. So there is no point of holding a grudge over them and saying, recruiters never give me honest feedback. They never even say what I did wrong in that interview. They're not going to. But on the other hand, if you want to, maintain a relationship with them, make that follow-up about them. And what I mean by that, even if, there's this term of, trying to add value. And I think a lot of the times people don't really understand what that means, or they think, okay, I need to invent something groundbreaking to offer to those people, and I don't have anything. So adding value does not mean inventing something groundbreaking. Sometimes adding value is simply not focusing on yourself so much, not focusing on, hey, can I get feedback? Hey, can I get referrals? Hey, can I get something? But try to give something, for a change, and see what happens. It could be some positive feedback from the interaction with that recruiter. You could say, hey, you know what? It's been so great working with you so far. I would love to stay in touch because you are different from other recruiters. I really appreciate your thorough approach. You asked me some interesting questions. Let's keep in touch. Even something as simple as that. And of course, I mean, you could go even further and make it a kind of a rule to keep in touch and kind of stay on their radar, and maybe get in touch with them every once in a while, maybe once a month or so, and just sending them some updates that might be relevant to what they do. Like if you came across a new resource that might be helpful, and maybe they already know that resource, that doesn't matter. It's the thought and your approach that counts. Because trust me, if you are the one person who is not looking to get something from a recruiter, but is willing to give something, you're going to stand out like crazy. Like that is definitely not something that recruiters commonly see in job candidates.
Yes, and I especially like the idea of like adding value, because one of the things that I try and do, especially when I'm communicating with people, if they say, oh, I wish I knew more about X, Y, and Z, or I knew about this or something like that, and I know someone who maybe is an expert in that field or have done podcasts, you could say, hey, I know that you said you wanted to learn more about the environment or something like that. You could say, I know this great podcast and I just wanted to pass it along. Thank you again for all of your help, and I hope you can stay in touch. And that way it's just like, I listened to what you said, I took something away from it, but I also want to give you something. So I think that's such a wonderful suggestion.
Yeah, I agree with you, because sometimes, when you have a conversation or an interview and a certain topic comes up and you realize that the other person could use some more information on that, and you are the expert, presumably. So why not share some resources with them? Like, I don't know, YouTube videos, podcasts, books, whatever, right? And that way that person can learn something, and maybe they can use that information in, when they're hiring someone else. So that way you're kind of definitely staying on their radar.
Yeah. And we have a question, I think this is very much related, from Lisa, which is, how do you network remotely? So there's obviously, like, if you get in touch with a recruiter or you get in touch with the hiring manager, you have that automatic connection there. But how do you actually network remotely during the pandemic? What suggestions do you have? And I think we have a similar question here from William, which basically asked about, how does LinkedIn add value to your job search? How do you maximize your strategy using LinkedIn? So how do you network and sort of exist online as a job seeker and do that networking that you need to do?
For sure. That's a great question too. I think the number one thing that you need to do is to make sure that you're positioning yourself well on LinkedIn. And that starts with, obviously, something as simple as polishing up your profile and knowing how to formulate your selling points, your competitive advantage in that profile. So don't simply copy paste your resume, but add more to it in terms of what makes you different. Why should people want to engage with you or have a conversation with you? Because these days, especially when you're networking remotely, what it means essentially is that you no longer have that advantage of showing up in the room and being your charming self and getting everybody to like you. All you have is that opportunity for a digital first impression. And that's what your profile is. So if you are someone who is, looking to step up your online networking, look at your profile very thoroughly, have other people look at it. If you want, get some help with writing your profile or do it yourself, but just make sure that you are indeed maximizing that presence. That's number one. And then once you want to start, reaching out to people, make it as thoughtful and meaningful as you can. And obviously it doesn't mean, spending hours on just one person, because you may want to kind of, again, diversify your approach and engage with a lot of people. But the one thing that people neglect often is your LinkedIn newsfeed. So when you think remote networking, everybody immediately thinks direct messaging. So I have to go into messaging, craft some kind of a text, make sure that it's thoughtful and nice, and send it over, and then hope for a response. Remote networking can happen in your newsfeed. If you find a relevant piece of content like what we're doing right now, or maybe you read a post from someone else talking about a topic that resonated with you, comment under that post, show up for other people, ask questions, engage your friends. I don't know, tag your 3 friends who are also job searching, who could use that piece of content, who could read that article and learn something from it. So that way you start networking in the comments, because for example, a lot of the best friendships, I can even call them friendships, that I made in the recent years have come from doing exactly that. I see a piece of content that I like, I engage with the people who are having a conversation there, and then if I see that there's some potential to taking that to a one-on-one direct messaging, great, I do that. Sometimes you take it to a Zoom call or a phone call or something, or a Zoom virtual coffee meeting or something like that. So there's always potential for it. And plus, the good news is that in your newsfeed, you expose yourself to a lot more people at the same time, whereas you can only message one person at a time. So it's kind of you're killing two birds with one stone. So you're getting some visibility, you're getting that new, like working on building that new habit of being more proactive on LinkedIn. And it can also be fun. So, yes, remote networking can be fun if you make it fun, but it's up to you to use all of the different opportunities, not only direct outreach, but also being active in your newsfeed.
Yes, and I think, what I always recommend to people is just show what you know. And I think that's half the battle of, populating your social media and creating a brand, is that, if you know something, even if it's customer service or how you treat customers, things like that, those are all things that give value, and that's something that you could build a community around. So I think that's excellent advice. And it's also a way for you to show beyond your resume, beyond your cover letter, how exactly you can show your expertise. So I think that that's such wonderful advice. And we have a question here, and it's funny. I read a statistic this morning that said 63% of people who were laid off during the pandemic are looking to change careers. And Anna, a different Anna, asked, how do you navigate a career change? And I think so many people, maybe their industry isn't doing well because of the pandemic, or maybe they've rethought, what they actually want to do with their professional life. How would you suggest people go about making a career change? Because obviously it's different for different people.
For sure. And actually, I did a whole video on my YouTube channel about that. And the good news, guys, for anyone here who is looking to switch careers, I mean, it's easy to think that now is the worst possible time to do this, but actually, I think it could also be the best possible time to do this, because now a lot of companies are more open to career changes than before. Because these days, it's no longer, I mean, sometimes it's obviously people doing this by choice, but a lot of the times people are doing that because, well, that's the only option left, because their industry is simply not doing well at all. So it could be a really great time to kind of take a second and rethink what you want to do. And the best thing that you want to start with is identifying your transferable skills. What I mean by transferable skills is your qualifications and competencies that you learned from, that industry that you've worked in for many years, or that career that you were doing. And those skills that can be applied in this new field that you want to go to. And obviously, when I'm saying you have a field that you want to go to, what I mean is you need to have a clear goal in mind. Because one of the worst possible things that you can do in job search is thinking, I'll just try everything, and whatever sticks is going to be that thing that I'm going to do. That's not going to happen, especially considering that in every one of those areas that you might be trying to kind of test, there are also thousands of other people who are unemployed, who are facing challenges, and who you need to compete against. So A, you want to have that clear target in mind. B, you need to have a list of transferable skills, and you need to focus your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your cover letter around those competencies. So literally help those new companies in the new industry or the new area that you're targeting, help them understand how what you've done in the past translates to what they need. Because a lot of the times job seekers assume that companies just know, right? So if I put on my resume that I've done this new company will just know that that means that I can deliver on this one as well. Well, because it's so similar, right? Like, why wouldn't they figure it out? They won't figure it out. You need to tell it to them as clearly and as directly as possible. Don't let companies, recruiters, employers, don't let them assume things or try to do some guesswork or anything like that. So focus your resume around those transferable skills and directly link those skills to those needs and challenges and gaps that are mentioned in the job that is new to you or is in a new industry, and make your positioning, your entire image, your entire first impression about that. And finally, I would say the third thing that you want to do is make sure that, again, you're diversifying your approach. So you're not only applying online, because odds are considering that you may not have a lot of industry experience, the applicant tracking system is not going to be your best friend. And you may not have enough keywords to score high on that. So you want to start, building your bridge, building those relationships one by one to this new area or the new career. So tap into your existing network, like literally message 20 people that you know best and ask them, hey, do you know someone who works in this company or in this industry? Even if it's not exactly the type of position you're looking for right now, get connected with that person, because odds are they know quite a few other people who work in that same industry, and they can get you in touch with them. And that kind of a warmer introduction is always better than cold messaging people. So, sometimes it may take you quite a few interactions and connections to get to that final goal, to that final company, the person that you actually wanted to get in touch with. But it's still a higher return on your time invested than simply applying online.
Yes. No, I think that's really wonderful advice. And we have time for another question. And I think this is a good one to end on. And it's from Edith, which is basically, how do you stand up and get hired? And I think a lot of people, especially like you said, there's so many people job seeking right now, they don't feel like they really stand out among the crowd. So if you're a job seeker and you see maybe a ton of other people looking for work too, how do you suggest they stand out among that sea of applicants?
Well, I mean, obviously that's like a topic for possibly another half-hour conversation, so I'll try to keep it short. Well, number one is obviously you want to take a look at your resume, because these days, I mean, this is the tool that you're going to be using a lot. And you want to make sure that that tool is as compelling and as good of a representation of yourself as it can get. If it means revamping the whole thing and rethinking the whole document, maybe that's what it takes. If it means polishing up a few things here and there because your resume is already in a good shape, well, great, then you have less work to do. But first, obviously, tap into yourself and start thinking, what are those competitive advantages that set me apart? So, like, literally put yourself in the employer's shoes and think, if there were 100 other people who have the exact same minimum qualifications, like everything that is mentioned in the requirements of a job, they have that. And there's you. Why should the employer pick you? What it is that you have that those other 100 people may not necessarily have? And make that a priority on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, everywhere, basically. That's number one. Number two, like the stuff that we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of being more proactive on LinkedIn. So a lot of job seekers, the majority of people, that's what they do. They optimize their profile and then they're like, well, okay, now I'm going to sit back and see what happens. I'm going to easy apply every once in a while and then we'll see how it goes. Imagine if 1,000 other people are doing the exact same thing because that's the easy route. Well, how can you expect a result that is above average? You really can't. So you need to do something that is above average. And being proactive, like the stuff that we talked about in terms of networking in your newsfeed, or knowing how to approach other people if you are direct messaging someone, again, without overwhelming them with an ask. So don't approach someone saying, someone you haven't spoken to in a while, or someone you're getting in touch for the very first time ever, right away, hey there, I need a job. Like, that's overwhelming. Sometimes people, even if they are kind and they are thoughtful and they want to help you, but you throw that bomb on them and they don't really know what to do with it. Like, what kind of job? How? Like, there are so many questions. So make sure that you establish some kind of initial rapport before you ask anybody for any kind of help. That will help you stand out as well. And finally, I would say overall, be very smart about your strategy. Again, diversifying your approach and hitting a lot of different venues at the same time. Because a lot of the times I feel, well, at least that's what happens when I talk to job seekers. I always push for this idea of, allocating your time effectively in your job search. And everybody's like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. You're right. And then we connect again after a week. And I'm like, okay, so what have you, how are things going? What have you done during this week? And they're like, yeah, well, pretty much 90% of the time I was applying online, and then I ran out of time that I had available. So it was like I only messaged 2 people. And I'm like, well, So in theory, you understand the idea that you need to allocate your time differently, but in practice, you're still doing the exact same thing. You're still spending 90% of your time applying online and only 10% doing networking and other activities. So make sure that you start working towards changing that allocation. I'm not suggesting stop applying online altogether, but make more time for those other activities that can help you stand out. Because trust me, I get so many messages every single day, and it's rare when I get a message when I see that the person knows what they're doing. They know how to approach me. They know how to find that, establish that initial relationship before they seek any kind of help. I mean, obviously, I'm under no illusion that they are not seeking help, but it's just how they do it, because they take the time to make it more meaningful. They take the time to make it more about what I may get out of this as well. So thinking about the other person and how you can add value. And that's also something that we were talking about earlier.
Yes. And I think, one thing that I always keep in mind is that employers are very self-centered entities. So it's always about sort of what you can do for them, and the person who stands out and says, this is what I can do for you, and I could do it better than any other person. Like, that's the person that they're going to go after because they're selfish. So that's what I always keep in mind. So thank you so much for all this wonderful information, Anna. I thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, and I hope everyone was following at the bottom of the screen, because we've been displaying your LinkedIn URL at the bottom. So I hope everyone was seeing it and they'll follow you. Thank you so much. And if you want to find Anna, she posts a ton of great content, especially on LinkedIn Stories, which is a new feature on LinkedIn. So Anna Lokotkova, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. And I hope to connect with you guys today. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn and get in touch.
Yes, thank you. And to all of you out there, thank you so much for joining us. I know we talked a lot about rejection today, and everyone feels that. They feel lonely. But remember that no one wants to see anyone out of work. So everyone is really rooting for you, even if it doesn't feel like that sometimes. So the wind is at your back, and we are really there for you. We're a great community, I think. So just remember that you're not alone in all of this. And, we usually at this point will suggest you RSVP for next week's show, but we're taking next week off. But don't worry, I'll be back November 6th with a fresh show. So until then, and until I see you again, be well and be safe, and best of luck on the job hunt.